Shogun. As thousands of brave samurai spill the blood of their brothers on the once peaceful islands of Japan.
Ninjas and samurai, epic battles and bloody skirmishes, lands to command and conquer, names to make and legendary status to earn. The return of the Total War real-time strategy series to its feudal Japan roots looks to build on both the style and substance of iterations that have seen gamers enter the battlefields from ancient Rome to Napoleon's conflicts across Europe, with gamers able to play out the most significant battles at Waterloo and Trafalgar. The original Shogun Total War came a little out of left field when it was released on PC in 2000. Developers The Creative Assembly were better known for producing sports games for EA, but branched out with what looked like a very risky play in the burgeoning real-time strategy field. It made sense to dive into a popular genre, even though it was dominated by powerhouse franchises like Command & Conquer. Feudal Japan wasn't an obvious choice for a foray into mass battles, but the period proved incredibly fertile for campaigns where characters emerged above the hubbub of hundreds of clanging swords on armor. The game was successful enough to kick off a franchise. The return to Japan brings with it a slew of upgrades from the original Shogun, and lessons learned through the Rome, Medieval, Napoleon, and other titles in the same franchise.
We'd got to the point with Empire and Napoleon where we had something that was massive in scale. And for some of us we felt that maybe that was kind of like overwhelming to a lot of people. And at the same time we didn't want to lose that scale, but we wanted to go into more depth in gameplay. So we thought, right, with Shogun what we can do is we can actually dive deep and really make the player feel that he's part of a medieval Japanese environment. And also at the same time give them that feeling that it's not just a small world. Just because we've gone to Japan, that map is just as large as the map we had for Europe in terms of actual scale. At the same time, you've got a unique environment, you've got a world that has its own feeling and flavour and its own consistency, and at the same time you've got warfare on a massive scale between huge armies still clashing, and that it has a defining effect on the rest of the world.
For Shogun 2, chosen as the team's next project by company Pull, the opportunity to return to a realm it already knew allowed for a total reimagining of a feudal Japanese landscape powered by new tools, new lessons learned, and new technology.
I mean, the numbers of features, if you look at Shogun and then look at Shogun 2, the variety of features and the types of features that are in the game have grown exponentially. Again, in terms of actual technology, all the things that we could do, what we could do back, in Shogun, and what we can do now, there is no comparison. We had sprite men in Shogun. Now we have 3D men with hundreds of polys and loads of textures, and we have enormous textures by comparison as well. Then in terms of, for example, the 3D kind of space that's involved, we were doing very basic kind of Hills of Surrey kind of rolling kind of battlefields. Now we actually have something that I would suggest looks, a pretty close approximation to a Japanese environment.
The single-player game begins in 1545, and you start with one castle and a single army. Set in the Sengoku period of Japanese history, it represents a time when several factions controlled relatively even amounts of land and resources. And when it all broke down, battlefields strewn with archers, cavalry, katana-wielding samurai, and more. That's the premise as you dive into this unique setting. Aware that not every gamer will immediately understand some of the naming conventions applied to unit types, locations, and even character names, a full encyclopedia, accessible with a quick right click, will answer virtually every question.
Is that every time you raise a unit for the first time, you'll actually get a little movie that plays, and that will explain to you what that unit does, why it's there, and also kind of what its strengths and weaknesses are against other units. And as a result, as you go through the game, you're not kind of going, well, what's a Yari Ashigaru? You go, oh, okay, right, that's a spearman. If you kind of raise, for example, an archer samurai unit, you'll know that basically, they're really good at missile combat. They're not particularly good in melee, and at the same time, because they're samurai, they're proud, and they'll actually stand and fight, even if it's not necessarily in their favour.
From this small start, advisors will offer suggestions on actions to take, allegiances to make, or wars to start. Open up diplomatic communications and the view will switch to a 3D representation of your negotiations, allowing you to see the reaction from your opponent to your suggestions. As you establish trade alliances with neighboring factions, or simply invade their land and take it by force, you'll build more units from a roster of roughly 35 basic types. Samurai, ninjas, and even geishas can all play a pivotal role in your faction's progression. In addition, differing neighboring states can provide specific bonus types if you conquer them, so choosing where to move and where to negotiate depends largely on how you want to shape your army. In battle itself, it can appear daunting to have thousands of fully motion-captured 3D soldiers on screen at once. But a control interface refined over 10 years of practice in the trenches of RTS design lets you select, face, move, and retreat your squads. It proved easier to pick up than we expected. Swirling the camera through the battlefields revealed a rich attention to detail as weakened infantry were cut down by marauding cavalry, or obscured archers picked off stray units. Yes, there was a lot to follow, but just hovering the mouse over a squad's banner provided instant feedback on their health and morale, if they were taking heavy casualties or kicking ass. As befits any PC RTS franchise, particularly one as popular and as well regarded as Total War, it will reward the level of effort you devote to learning its nuances, and then applying your skills on the battlefield.
As the game progresses, obviously, you know, the enemy is also going to progress, so you'll just get larger and larger armies. Your kind of decision-making processes will stop being just about, for example, what do I do with my castle, but what do I do with all my castles, what do I do with all my regions, what do I do with my trade, how do I keep these guys happy? I'm going to have to carry out some diplomatic deals.
Of course, single player is only part of the Shogun 2 Total War story, so check back soon for our hands-on impressions of the multiplayer component that promises some intriguing features to keep you scheming for dominance. And if that's not enough, did we mention